It started with a drawing, just a handful of crayon lines on printer paper, a yellow sun, blue sky, a crooked little house. Tom had seen hundreds of these over the years. They were taped to the fridge, folded into lunch boxes, forgotten under car seats. But this one was different. It was parent-teacher day at Lily's school. Tom had taken a half day off work, his shirt still creased from his office chair, his tie tucked in his pocket. He didn't mind these events. Watching Lily's eyes light up when he showed up made everything worth it. Mrs. Granger, her kindergarten teacher, greeted him with a polite smile, leading him toward a row of desks cluttered with finger paints and alphabet puzzles. Lily made something for you, she said warmly, pulling a sheet from a stack. She said, "This one's special." Tom took the paper. At first he smiled. There was the usual childlike charm, Mommy in a red dress, Lily with her pigtails, their golden retriever, Max. And then another man, standing right next to Maria, hand in hand, tall, brown hair, a triangle of gray stubble drawn with careful care. Tom's brow furrowed. "Who's this?" he asked, turning slightly as Lily skipped over to him. She beamed. "That's Mommy's secret friend. He comes when you're at work." The air in the room chilled. Mrs. Granger's polite smile froze, flickering with unease. Tom didn't react, not outwardly. He crouched to Lily's level, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, masking the weight that just dropped into his chest. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "what do you mean, secret friend?" Billy shrugged, already bored with the topic. "He brings Mommy flowers sometimes, and cookies, but he doesn't like Max." She trotted off to the puzzle table, leaving Tom kneeling, the drawing still in his hands, like evidence presented in court. The room blurred for a moment. 1,000 thoughts fought for space in his mind, but none of them made it to his face. That was Tom's gift, the quiet, careful processing of disaster. The engineer in him didn't collapse under pressure. He built plans, systems. So he folded the drawing neatly and tucked it into his coat pocket. Then he smiled and thanked the teacher, kissed Lily on the forehead, told her he'd bring ice cream later. He didn't ask Maria. He didn't demand explanations. There was no fight, no raised voice, no scene in the car. There would be no confrontation. Not yet. Because unlike her, Tom believed in precision. Let the drawing be the spark. Now it was time to build the trap. Tom didn't speak a word about the drawing that night. Over dinner, Maria laughed at something on her phone. Lily dipped broccoli in ketchup and Max whined for scraps. It was all so painfully normal. But Tom wasn't really in the room. Not anymore. His body moved, nodded, smiled, but his mind had shifted into blueprint mode, calculating paths, risks, outcomes. This wasn't a husband reacting. This was an engineer solving a problem. He waited until the house left. The sound of breathing upstairs was steady. Maria's familiar sighs, Lily's occasional murmur. Tom moved through the dark like a phantom, quietly retrieving the drawing from his coat and placing it under the warm light of his desk lamp in the garage. He studied it, not just the man, tall, brown hair, stubble, but the details, placement, proximity, Maria's hand in his, Lily off to the side, not holding either of theirs, Max sketched with jagged lines between them, a child's worldview in crayon, unfiltered, honest. Then he scanned their home network. Maria had always been cautious, but not cautious enough. Her laptop left digital fingerprints, browser caches, auto-filled email aliases, calendar entries tagged as consult calls at oddly convenient times. By 2 a.m., Tom had a name, Simon Reeves. Tom recognized it. They'd met once, years ago, in passing, an ex-colleague from Maria's old agency. Smug, overdressed, the kind of man who always made sure his cologne entered a room before he did. His LinkedIn page still listed him as a creative consultant. Tom studied his profile photo, clean lines, tailored jacket, Rolex half tucked under the cuff. Maria had always said Simon was too much, a harmless flirt, she'd claimed. "You know how advertising people are," she'd joked once. Tom remembered. The memory hit like a slow leak in the gut. A moment at a dinner party, Simon's hand lingering half a second too long on Maria's lower back, her laugh a little too bright. That split-second flash in her eyes when she caught Tom watching. He hadn't thought about it since, until now. By morning, Tom had created a burner email. Pretending to be a startup tech client, he reached out to Simon requesting a consultation. Vague, but lucrative. Simon responded within an hour, eager and chatty. They scheduled a lunch meeting the following Thursday. Tom didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just momentum. And a steady, chilling satisfaction. Every time Maria kissed his cheek or texted an emoji, it hardened him further. She didn't suspect, she couldn't. And Tom would keep it that way. The next weekend, Maria mentioned a spa day with a girlfriend. Tom offered to drive her. She declined, quickly, too quickly. He watched her car until it disappeared, then activated the camera he'd placed behind the bookshelf in the living room. That night, reviewing the footage, he saw her return, alone, for now. But she didn't sit, she didn't watch TV, she paced, she checked her phone constantly, changed clothes 3 times. She was preparing. But for what? Tom started logging her movements, not in an obsessive way, in a methodical one. Engineering style. He noted inconsistencies. Days she claimed to be busy but made no calls. Evenings she returned home flushed, smiling quietly at herself. His patience was his weapon. Rage would ruin this. One night, after Lily had gone to bed, Maria curled beside him on the couch. Tom held her, his arm draped over her shoulder, and as she rested her head against his chest, he stared across the room, not at the TV, but at the family portrait on the wall. 3 smiles, a frozen moment, a lie in a wooden frame. Tom had all the pieces now. It was just a matter of timing. Tom believed in precision, not just in machines or measurements, but in moments. And this moment had to be exact. He didn't want an outburst, no cathartic yelling or slam doors. He wanted a stage, perfectly set, perfectly timed, where truth would be the only sound in the room. It began with a bottle of wine, a well-reviewed red from the cellar, something Maria liked but rarely bought for herself. He placed it in the kitchen that Tuesday morning, casually mentioned he was thinking of having some friends over for dinner Friday. Old work buddies, he said, just a little catch-up. Maria barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice," she said. "I'll make something special." The detail was important. She would cook, she would light candles, she would dress up, not knowing she was preparing the scene of her own unmasking. Tom texted Simon the same afternoon, confirming their networking dinner. He sold it as a casual opportunity, some interesting engineers, potential project funding, drinks, and conversation. Simon was instantly interested, typical. Always eager to be the smartest man in the room, even if it wasn't his. Friday arrived cold and gray, the sky pressing low. Tom left work early, picking up fresh bread and desserts to complete the illusion. At home, Maria was already in the kitchen, apron tied, humming softly as she diced vegetables. She kissed him absent-mindedly. There was no guilt in it. That's what struck him the most, not even guilt. Just routine. Lily, thankfully, had been invited to a friend's sleepover. Tom made sure of it. She wouldn't be part of this. She had already said enough. By 6:30, the table was set. Warm lights, music low, the smell of rosemary chicken filling the room. Maria had changed into a slate blue dress. Elegant, tasteful. It brought out the soft brown of her eyes. The same eyes that once watched him at the altar like he was her whole world. Now they looked past him, searching for something else. At 7:12, the doorbell rang. Tom opened it with a smooth smile. "Simon, glad you made it." Simon walked in confidently, shaking Tom's hand with a firm grip. His coat was expensive, his shoes polished. He carried a bottle of wine and the self-assurance of a man who thought the world owed him comfort. Maria stepped into the hallway, and for a heartbeat, the world paused. Her breath caught. Just barely. Simon froze. Recognition sparked between them like an exposed wire. But neither of them said a word. Simon blinked. Maria's smile faltered, then returned. Thinner. "Simon," she said, "what a surprise." Tom motioned them into the dining room like he hadn't seen the tiny quake pass between them. "You two know each other?" "A bit," Simon said, laughing too quickly. "From Maria's old agency. Small world, huh?" Maria nodded tightly, pouring herself a glass of wine as if the act could stabilize her nerves. "Yes. Small world." Dinner was a symphony of silence between notes of conversation. Tom guided it effortlessly, asking Simon about work, creative projects, trends in advertising. Maria picked at her food, speaking only when spoken to. At one point, Tom caught Simon's eyes drifting toward her, lingering just a second too long. Maria noticed. Her fingers tensed around her fork, and then came the moment. Tom excused himself to the kitchen to fetch dessert. He returned not with plates, but with a folded sheet of paper, worn now at the creases. A child's drawing. He placed it on the center of the table like a court exhibit. Both Maria and Simon stared at it. Neither spoke. "Lily made this," Tom said quietly, his voice devoid of accusation. "That's me. That's her. That's Max. And that's you." Maria's eyes darted towards Simon, but he was already leaning back in his chair, face pale. "She said you're mommy's secret friend, that you come when I'm not home." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical. No one dared fill it with meaningless noise. Tom stood slowly. He turned to Maria. "Do you know what I admire most about Lily?" he asked. "She doesn't know how to lie convincingly. Not yet." Maria opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her lips trembled. Her glass was still half filled, but her throat worked like she couldn't swallow. Tom turned to Simon. You knew she was married. Simon looked cornered now, like prey that suddenly realized it wasn't hunting anymore. She said things weren't. Tom held up a hand. I'm not interested in your damage control. He turned back to Maria. You used to say Lily was a dreamer, but she's not. She just sees clearly. Tom pulled a small envelope from his pocket and placed it beside the drawing. Inside, keys, copies of the house deed, bank transfer details. A handwritten note, unsigned. Maria looked at it, then back at him. You're leaving? She whispered. No, Tom said softly. You already did. I'm just catching up. He looked at them both one last time. The man who thought he could sneak through another man's house and the woman who thought love was a disposable convenience. Then he turned and walked out of the room. No slamming doors, no shouted curses, only the sound of a chair creaking under Maria's weight as her world began to collapse inward. Tom didn't slam the door behind him. He stepped into the cold air and let it settle over his skin like armor. It was quiet outside, just the chirp of crickets and the rustle of distant leaves. But his pulse thudded in his ears like a war drum. He didn't look back. Inside that house, two people sat in a silence of their own making, staring at a child's drawing and a set of keys that said everything words couldn't. He drove aimlessly for a while, past familiar intersections, the gas station where Lily always begged for candy, the bookstore Maria never visited anymore. Each place passed like a mile marker in a life that was no longer his. When the sky turned indigo, he pulled over near the old overlook, where city lights flickered like a distant constellation. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Maria calling? He let it ring out. Then came the message, not a voicemail, a text. We need to talk, please, not like this. Tom stared at the screen, thumb hovering. He hit it over his throat. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, he returned home just after dawn. The house was still. Maria had slept in the guest room or hadn't slept at all. He didn't ask. Lily's room was empty, as planned. Tom walked past the kitchen table where the drawing still lay, untouched. No one had dared move it. He placed his coffee on the counter and for a moment just stood there. Then he heard her. I didn't know he was coming. Mira's voice was husky, cracked, the aftermath of crying or trying not to. Tom, dude, turn. But you knew he existed, he said. Silence. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said. That's the problem, Maria. You didn't mean for anything. You let it happen. You let her draw him into our family without a second thought. That landed. He heard it. The small involuntary breath she sucked in. You don't understand what it's like, she said. Tom turned now, finally. His face wasn't angry. It was exhausted. No, he said, voice low. You don't understand what it's like to come home every day, carry the weight, hold the structure together, not because it's easy, but because it's right. You had the freedom to be unhappy. You just didn't have the decency to be honest about it. Maria stepped forward, reaching for something. Him, maybe, but Tom moved past her, heading upstairs. He needed to pack. Billy would be home that evening, and he wanted to be gone by then. Not because he was running, but because she deserved peace. By noon, Tom had loaded 2 bags into the trunk of his car. Nothing dramatic, just essentials. He wasn't making a scene. That would be too easy. Before leaving, he placed an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside it, a letter, not to Maria, to Lily. Sweetheart, it read. I'm not going far. I'm not gone. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did everything right. Thank you for being honest, even when no one else was. That takes courage. You have more of it than most adults I know. I love you, and I always will. No matter where I am, you'll always be my home. He signed it, Dad, and sealed it. Maria stood in the hallway, watching. She looked like a ghost of herself. Makeup faded, hair disheveled, feet bare on the hardwood floor. The dress from last night was gone. She wore one of Tom's old flannels, the sleeves hanging over her hands. Where will you go? She asked. Somewhere honest, he replied. She didn't cry, not visibly, but her lips pressed tight and her shoulders slumped, like someone finally realizing they were no longer in control of the narrative. Tom opened the door, let the air rush in. One day, she said, suddenly she'll ask why. He paused at the threshold. And I'll tell her, he said, that people make mistakes, but some mistakes don't come with forgiveness. Some just come with truth. Then he left. Later that evening, in a quiet park lined with bare trees and winter benches, Tom sat beside Lily on a swing set. Her little legs kicked at the dust. She held a new drawing in her hand. She showed it to him without a word. It was simpler than the last one, just 2 figures, her and Tom. No dog, no house, no third figure, just them. In shaky 6-year-old handwriting at the bottom, it read, Me and Dad, we tell the truth. Tom smiled and kissed the top of her head. The wind whispered through the trees like it was sweeping something clean.